This is New Home Insights, the John Burns Real Estate Consulting Podcast. I'll be your host, Dean Worley. As the title promises, we're going to bring you insights into everything housing, latest trends, innovations, observations, and issues of the day. We'll bring in colleagues here at John Burns and also some major industry players from all across the country. This podcast is going to be quick, fun, but also hopefully make you think. So see you here every couple of weeks. Now let's get to it. Welcome to the New Home Insights podcast by John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. Today, we're going to talk about really how it is for a major new home builder to get along and function and thrive in this crazy mixed up world we all live in. To help us do that, we have one of the biggest and the best. We have Sheryl Palmer, the chairman and CEO of Taylor Morrison Homes, one of the biggest and the best builders of the nation. And I don't say that because I'm biased. I say that because it's true. Sheryl, please say hi.
Thanks, Dean. That's so kind. I wish that was true, but I sure appreciate it anyways.
We both know it's true. So let's get into it because, we're going to start with just how you look at the world as a major builder, and then we're going to transition to how you're looking at the world going forward as a major builder. So let's start with just kind of the basics. What are you looking at when you decide to, enter a market or expand in a market, or even the opposite, to contract or even step away from market? What are the key factors specific to that market that you're looking at?
Yeah, when I think about our portfolio, we really like the markets that have the big trends. We know we're in a cyclical industry. We know markets are going to come and go. I think about the last 5 years, and half the markets across the country have gone through some sort of mini blip. But you can't take a month, a week, even a quarter and create, and get the fears that can happen in the media. So it's not one factor. It's really the consolidation of a lot of information, talking to realtors on the ground. It's putting all of that together and then using good business judgments.
I want to ask you kind of a two-parter here. What is the single biggest, I won't constrain you that much, but what are the biggest positives right now to be in the market? And forewarning, I'm going to ask you the reverse here in a second.
Oh, for sure. I'd say two. Okay, I'm going to cheat. I'd say the demographic tailwinds, Dean. I mean, you know this better than I do with all the wonderful work you guys do. But you look at the demographics today and, let's split it apart. Let's talk about the boomers first. And, we got 80 million of these folks. They're financially secure. They know what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and they're willing to pay for it. It's discretionary, but it ties to their wants and needs of how this next chapter, how they want to live this next chapter. And that's about a third of our business. And it's a tremendous market. And we serve that market in age restricted, age targeted, and in our family communities. But they, like I said, it might be the jewel box where they just don't want a lot of room, but what they want, they're going to put in that house. Or it might be the McMansion that they really want a place for all the family to come, and they want the golf course premium and the golf course views or the water views. It's really across the board, but just a tremendous market segment. And it's the greatest part of wealth in America today, and it's not going anywhere in the next many years. In fact, I think the number of households over the next 10, 15 years are going to, I think the top piece of that market will be the 65 plus over the next 10 years.
I don't want to let that I'm sorry. I want to let that jewel box go. That's a great little nugget. I love that. So that's a smallish home, but they load it up with tremendous upgrades, the jewel box.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with affordability, right? It has to do that I don't want all that space. I want to be nimble and travel, but I want the beautiful amenities within my home, but I'll trade off I don't need 3,000, 3,500 square foot. I need the 2 bedrooms and a beautiful place and a great backyard.
Yeah, I love that.
So then let's go to the millennials. And that's the one that's just so fun to talk about because, there's not a day goes by that you won't find TED headlines. And I'd probably take a contrarian view of at least half of them on a normal day.
Yeah.
But, this population's not buying. Well, of course, this population's buying. When we look at the millennials, Dean, and I think I did speak about this last week in a media discussion, but we actually break the millennials in two groups. I'll call them the old millennials, that over 30, and I've got some of those in my household, so they're not really that old, but the 30 to 38 millennial, and then the under 30 millennial. And interestingly enough, when I look at and I guess before I go there, I think, what we see a lot is this generation, they don't see home ownership the same way, and they might not want to buy a house. And we actually don't subscribe to that at all. I would share that when we look at our millennials, which is about a third of our business, and I break it into those two subgroups. If I start with the younger millennials, about 72% of our younger millennials are buying their first house, which means 28% of them are buying their second house, under 30. And when I look at the older millennials, the stats are staggering. I mean, 45% of our older millennials are buying their first house, and 56 are buying their second. And, truly the trend over the last 30, 40 years has been every 3 to 5 years, we're seeing home ownership age move up a year or two. So this is not a new trend to say that the average age of the millennial is going to be 32. It's just, it's such a big group that we just are so focused on it. But they are waiting till they get married and have at least one kid. But if you think about the millennials today, that largest group being still a young millennial, oh my gosh, the next many years are very exciting.
Yeah, and they are, is in some senses a way of just counting them, right? They're getting married a little bit later, but maybe they're cohabitating at the same time, and whether they're married, have that marriage certificate or not, they still act like a family household, and they're still doing the things. Maybe it's a little bit later, but they're still acting the way those family quote unquote households acted in the past.
They are very much so. And it's interesting because maybe the generation before the millennials was kind of like, I can't wait to get out of the house and I'm going to run as far as I can. And that's not the case with this millennial. They actually love the way they grew up. A piece of research that I was just so not intuitive for me was who was the greatest holder of the dining room table, the millennial or the boomer? And I was shocked to see it was the millennial.
Really?
The boomer saying, I'll come to your house and cook dinner. I want to see you. I want to be with the babies, but let's do it at your place. And the millennial saying, I want the way I grew up. I want everyone around the Thanksgiving table.
Okay, so let's switch it. What do you see as kind of the biggest hurdle, or hurdles? You can have two or three if you need to buying right now.
Okay, well, first, let me give you the second, I think, positive, because the optimist I am. If I just look at pure household formation, Dean, and to your last point, we still have a lot of those millennials. I think I saw a stat this morning still living in mom and dad's basement. So I think that continues, once again, the demographics. But then I just look at pure household formation and how under-sheltered we are as a country. And, we should be building, if you just look at household formation based on jobs and demolitions and second homes, we should be building at least 1.5 million houses a year. And we're not coming close to that yet. And we've been building on that deficit for years. So you put those demographic tailwinds and that undersupply, and I love being a national home builder today.
Yeah.
On the flip side, it's hard. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard because the labor markets, I know everyone's so tired of hearing it, and it's our job to manage through it. And we do each and every day. But it's hard because if it doesn't matter if you want to talk about the number of workers that are available, the quality of work, because it's so hard to get people into the trades that we're not growing them through the school system. The older tradesmen have kind of aged out and retired out of the business for all the reasons, immigration. For all the reasons we all know. it's harder today building, in my humble opinion, building 1,000,000, 2,000,000, 3 houses a year than it was, 15 years ago when we were building closer to 2,000,000
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah, I mean, is there a solution? Honestly, what is the solution for that? Have you guys ever considered offsite, for instance, offsite construction to help you with that process?
There's absolutely solutions, and I'm actually pretty excited. And I won't spend a lot of time on it, Dean, but I do think it's important that the industry has finally kind of taken it, kind of control of the situation, and hired a new CEO of a kind of workforce housing
Mm.
foundation. And the home builders, and I believe very soon we'll get the national manufacturers, suppliers to jump in really to tackle this. And some of the work will help us through this cycle, and some might be down the road. But we're going to tackle it in three different ways. And one is just the level of training, some sort of standardized training to help the local trades that might be more family, to help them recruit, onboard, and train. The second is a marketing piece, Dean, and I could talk hours, so I won't on it. But, you know, the young adult coming out of school today, I don't think aspires. It's actually a little bit of a cultural disconnect from maybe generations ago. I don't think they aspire to have a hammer in their hand. And so, and don't really appreciate the opportunities that exist in our industry today. And so it's really about helping educate them and maybe even their parents that vocational schools can
Yeah.
be really good. And then the third is kind of a technology piece that helps, very similar to what was done with the military, the government did years back, to help folks coming out of the military to onboard in their new world and kind of match their skills with job opportunities. It's really looking at the technology and doing that very same thing for young adults coming out of school, maybe veterans coming out. I think there's a number of ways to use the technology, but it's creating the job bank to match skills of an individual. So we're going to, I think, as an industry, spend a lot of time on it. As you know, the industry is also spending a lot
Yeah.
of time on prefab and manufactured efficiencies. We're playing with it in different markets. We're investing, exploring. You know, I wouldn't expect we're going to be, building a plant any day soon, but it's really about what's the efficiencies we can create at the local level on the job site with consistency, great trade partnerships, safety on our sites, respect for our trades, and the repetition. I mean, where these manufactured efficiencies really bode well is high volume and repetition. But even if we can do that on site, that allows our trades an opportunity to become more efficient and to know that they have a place to go and stay.
How about those other sort of, in terms of hurdles to home buying? The things people worry about, college debt and the ability to amass a down payment, of just pure affordability. Do those things cause you some angst?
You know, I think you have to look at all of it. And of course, to some subsets of the population, all of those characteristics exist. But if you want to take the numbers most globally, um, first of all, we find that the millennials are actually, in many instances, better qualified than many other buyer groups. Their debt levels are low. Some of them absolutely do have college debt. Um, but, a stat that I've shared, oh my goodness, Dean, so many quarters now with the street, is when we look at our overall consumers, and we test this every single quarter, and I've probably been sharing this for at least 2.5 years. And the only reason that's important is it hasn't changed. And interest rates have gone from 3% to 5% back to under
Yeah.
4%. Is our customers, and this is across all consumer groups, even our more affordable consumer groups, they have somewhere between 300 and 500 basis points of interest rate they can afford. So if they're paying 4, they actually could
Hmm.
qualify to 7, 8%. Doesn't mean they want to. Or look at that a different way, they could afford a much
Yeah.
bigger house. And so I think there's a lot packed in there. I think there's a lot to understand when you say the consumer today doesn't want to be house poor. They want to enjoy their lifestyle, but there's a lot of other things that are very important in their life. And having that flexibility and to enjoy life's experiences, it doesn't mean it comes with the biggest house you can afford. And even when interest rates were 5% in the fourth quarter, that still was 300 to 400 basis points. So, yes, of course, there's people, every situation exists out there. And we as a company and an industry continue to try to create more affordable environments. It's really about where you build and what kind of square footage and what kind of product. But all markets today feel pretty good.
Yeah. So you see this a little bit of a wiggle room there. I can't pronounce that word. Wiggle room there in terms of if interest rates do start creeping up a little bit, you have some room there. The market has some room there.
Well, we had some room in the fourth quarter, but I think we all learned a lot that the psychological impact. I mean, I'm an old person, so it was really hard for me to imagine that 5% interest rates could, we can all tell the story about, oh my gosh, our first house was 12%, right? And it's like, really? 5% interest rates?
Freak people, yeah.
But it's been a lot of years. Yeah. And there's the unintended impacts of that is, more than 80% of America today has an interest rate under 4.5%. So imagine, even if you're thinking about a boomer who's now an empty nester and I don't need this big house. So let me downsize, but let me pay a little bit less for the house, but pay a higher monthly mortgage because of interest rates and appreciation since I bought my last house. So clearly there's an emotional impact. Would we have worked through it in time? Yeah. We would have. But I think it's also the speed of play. It happened really quick.
Yeah, that's so true. The Q4 2018 was a little picture into that transition, but it was just the beginning of that transition when interest rates started coming right back down again.
Right. But look how quick we recovered.
Yeah. Well, how quickly people freaked out and then how quickly people recovered, right?
Yeah.
If it does play out over a longer term, I think you're right. It will play out. It'll just be there'll be a bump though.
It will take some time to become a new norm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the good news is, as a builder, I would say, because I really did believe as interest rates were moving, that was a good signal for the overall economy. But I don't think anybody anticipated really the emotional impact. And hey, I don't know that we can be 100% sure that it was 100% interest rate driven. I think that was a very large part of the impact at the end of last year. But think about all the noise in our world. I mean, tariffs, government shutdowns, interest. There was a lot. So if you didn't have to go make that decision, why would you?
Yeah, but we live in a really noisy world now. We're going to live in a noisy world for at least a year and a half or so.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think it's white noise at this point. I think the consumers kind of somewhat adjusted to it.
Let's drill down a little bit to buyers and you mentioned demographics that you guys look at there. What are the key, if you had to pick one or two demographic points or factors, what are the key ones you focus on when you're thinking about buyers in a given market?
Well, the obvious one, the two obvious ones, if you're dealing with the millennials, right, you're really talking about quality of schools. And that wouldn't be the case for the young millennials because I think if they've, thinking about having a child, then they've got a few years. The older millennials, that's real. And if you're waiting to buy and you're not buying that starter home, but you're buying that home that I'm going to raise my family in, then that quality of schools, neighborhood amenities, how am I close to, my employment, transportation, I think all of that really does matter. And candidly, as an organization, we try not to ever get too far astray from just all the attributes of core locations because markets will slow down and we can't time them. We're just never going to be quite that smart to get that just right. But good locations with all those appropriate attributes really, really do matter. And I think they matter through all cycles. When I'm thinking about the boomers, Dean, that's evolved a bit. I think about my old world many years ago when I really exclusively worked with the, retirement environment. And, the rules were pretty simple. Your ice cream can't melt on the way home from the grocery store.
Yeah.
And, you had to.
Or you're in Phoenix, so your dry cleaning
Yeah,
plastic
that's
can't
exactly
melt onto your jacket.
That's exactly right. And you had to be near, respectable distance within medical
Okay.
facilities. That's
Yeah.
evolved. I think at some level, some of that still really does matter. But I also think that the boomer and retiree of today is looking for much more culture. I think you're seeing a great movement from, the burbs to more of an urban or suburban environment for the boomers because they want to be nimble, they want to be able to be flexible and travel and follow, go visit the children. But they also want to surround themselves with culture and people like them and enjoy this part of the journey. So I think there has, once again, not one
Yeah.
size fits all. And that's the good news. You can have your more remote retirement communities that really just focus on big lifestyle behind the gates. And you can use your local amenities to create that same kind of lifestyle experience.
Will you also look at things like psychographics? Do you guys look at those? The psychographics specific to a given market? But that I mean, the prism, the classic kind of prism stuff like the boom burbs or the enterprising professionals or soccer moms and things like that. Do you guys see that?
Oh yeah, we have each of our baby maybes, each of our groups, and we absolutely. I would say it's actually almost more important than the demographics at some level, Dean. And we really do identify the psychographics of our buyers that are going to buy in our community. And if you go into our models, if we've done the right job, you will walk into our models and you'll know why the Joneses live there and everything about the Joneses
Yeah.
by the time you walk back out that front door. And it's a fascinating stat. When we do our underwriting, if we really do get that first and second key buyer correct, we really do understand. We've done all the proper homework, and it's an art, it's not a science, right? Because many times you'll have a community that will have many different kind of consumer groups that blend together. But if we really get that right, then our margins are probably in the area of 300 to 400 basis points better than if we've missed the mark and you're now trying to force the wrong consumer into the wrong product. You're
Yeah.
going to pay for it. So we spend a lot of time and attention there.
That's good, and we've seen it happen. I noticed that in terms of the age qualified market when this was a while ago, but you started, instead of hearing Andy Williams in the sales office, you heard Marvin Gaye, and so
Yeah.
you knew they were paying attention to who their buyers really were, not who they used to be.
That's true. And it's evolving and you have to stay with it. So like I think I started with, I hope I did. I'm just very fortunate to have a great, research team
Yeah.
that understands that. And, you can't just rest on it. I mean, research that we did 2 years ago, we can't go to market today with that. We have to keep it fresh and updated. And that's why we talk to our consumers. We talk to our buyers, we talk to our shoppers, we talk to them before they buy, we talk to them a year after they buy. So we really have to understand even what they thought. Is it still true a year later?
Yeah. So you'll be switching to Nirvana in the age qualified sales office in the not too distant future. Get ready for that.
Absolutely.
One more quickie before we ask you to look into your crystal ball. I'm going to do a little quick one here where just, you talk about the barbell buyer types that are important to you, the millennials and then the sort of the move downs of various stripes. Is there anyone you've seen or any market you've seen where you had a buyer type just really surprise you and say, that's got some legs there and we hadn't thought about that?
Well, let's talk build to rent for a minute. Because certainly, it's the same thesis. It's all the things we've talked about. It's, being a supply constrained country on rooftops, it's really understanding that even though home ownership is for many people, and I don't think the lows we've seen are kind of where we'll end up kind of as a long-term average, people buy and rent for different reasons. And we recently announced our strategic partnership with Christopher Todd Homes and are very excited about that. And the thesis was easy for us, recognizing that we needed to play this space a little differently, and not everybody was going to buy. What's been really wonderful about all the work that we've done so far is really understanding that it's so much in line with what we do every day, right? We're going to go find land, develop land, build houses. In our partnership, Christopher Todd will be responsible for the lease-up operation. And then at the right time, we'll divest of the asset. But when you look at the demographics, it's fascinating. I mean, I think about 50% of their communities are millennials. About 40% are boomers. They're quite qualified. They could make the decision to buy, but for life's reasons, they've opted not to yet. About 50% of the total, no matter what age cohort, are single women, which I think is fascinating, but it really speaks to the need for a sense of community, the lifestyle component, the security, the technology in the house, the doggy door in the backyard. So I think that's a new asset class that candidly we're quite surprised at how quick it's going to move. It's probably going to be the fastest growing asset class looking forward. But we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that was literally my first question to cue you up on my crystal ball one. So you segued ahead of me.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much. You skipped we can skip one. So I'll just, before we wrap up, I'll ask you a couple of crystal balls. One is the kind of more obvious one. How do you see this cycle playing out over the near term? And you have to answer that question without using the word inning. If you want to use like a soccer thing and do penalty time or something like that, go for it. But you can't say an inning. Just how do you see us in the next few years of this cycle?
Can I use quarters? No.
Sure, why not?
Something, I think you have to look at the cycle and break it apart. And you have to say, where are we on land prices? We're far along. Where are we on home prices? I think that range is very large across the U.S. Where are we on demand? I think we're in early days because I think once again, we're just so underbuilt. So how do I feel about it big picture? And the only thing I know for sure is I'll be wrong. But I'm really bullish. I think the crystal ball is actually a little foggier for me in the next 12 to 18 months with all this white noise we've talked about and what that does, and tariffs and what that does to get in the consumer's head. But when I look at the macro and I look at the kind of mid to long term, I'm very excited. I look at all the things we've talked about. Now, do I think that we're going to have mini blips? Absolutely. I mean, of the last 5 years, there's a number of markets where the pace of play was just so fast and furious, both on unit speed. But there's this natural governor we've talked about with labor. And so my crystal ball is pretty optimistic as I look over the long term.
Yeah, that is an interesting way to look at it too. And it makes sense, right? You're always going to have, especially right now, the way things are going with the noise you're talking about, and the way prices are. But long term, that demand and that lack of supply will feed the beast.
It will feed the beast. It's a hungry beast.
Yeah, it is. So let's end with, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you had to pick, okay, God came down and said, I'm going to give you the next 12 months. You look into the future on one indicator, one market indicator. What is it you would choose to get that insight, that foresight, I should say?
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I warned you. I was putting you on the spot.
That really does put me on the spot with no time.
I know. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I think it would, I believe it would center on the consumer optimism. I really do, because I feel confident enough on all the I'm like thinking and talking at the same time here, Dean.
Yeah.
But I feel optimistic enough about all the other kind of trends and macroeconomics. And I don't think that, housing is going to lead us into any sort of recession. And, I'm just going to keep a tick mark on how many years we project recession 2 years out. So all those things I'm just going to let go away. But if the fourth quarter taught us anything, and it's certainly not the first time, how quickly the consumer can be
Yeah.
impacted emotionally. And so, as long as all the things that play into their emotional psyche around jobs and affordability, so that's how I'm going to cheat and get all those other things put into it, because it's really about how the consumer's feeling about life.
Yeah, no, that's actually so. Yeah, so you feel like the big stuff better in terms of even the midterm trend. You know what's happening there. So pick the one thing that's going to most directly and immediately impact that buying decision, which is how they feel
Absolutely.
about. Okay, well, I think you nailed it
Oh,
especially with
thank you.
zero time to warn you about that. I wanted to put you on the spot. Well, Shell, this has been a great half hour. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights.
Well, thanks. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
That was New Home Insights with Dean Worley from the John Burns Real Estate Consulting Podcast. Please join us next time.